Good evening. Tonight is June 18th, 2013. This is the first meeting of Revere City Council's Ways and Means Subcommittee. We will be having a series of meetings over the next couple of weeks to review the budget that has been put before us by the mayor. I would like to recognize the councilors who are on the committee who are in attendance. We have Councilor Guanasso, Councilor Haz, and Councilor Powers. We also have Councilor Correggio and Councilor Penta. So the way I'd like to manage these meetings is to have to call out department heads, have them come before us, and we can. I will kind of go through the page number of what we're looking at on the budget, and we can kind of open it up for questions from there. Unfortunately, the mayor did tell me that he was going to be running a little bit late this evening, so I think we will start with the retirement board, which is on page 24. I'd also like to recognize Councilor Patch, who just joined us. So we're on page 24. There doesn't seem to be too much of a difference, about 300,000, but I'll allow you guys to explain.
Basically, the retirement pension fund appropriation is set by a state mandate. It's a funding schedule that the retirement board approves, but it is subject to state approval, and it's has planned increases built into it. The unfunded liability piece is amortized over a period, and it has built-in small increases per year that we try to keep to a minimum. Right now it's 2.45% on the unfunded liability piece that it increases a year. So it's basically the result of a state mandate. Yeah, and I think we had brought it up during our financial summit in March or April, but what is the unfunded liability for the city? Do we have a rough idea? I thought it was around 80 million or something. As of the last actuarial evaluation, it was about 75 million unfunded. Yeah. We're in the process of having another actuarial study done right now. I expect it to be higher than that. But, yeah. Okay. We've also had asset growth the past couple of years. Something our kids and our grandkids and great-grandkids look forward to. Again, the numbers are almost, they're just about 2 years old, about 56% as of the last, but hopefully we're going to get an update on that again, too. I'd also like to recognize Councilor Novoselsky, who just joined us. Do any councilors have any questions? Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carolyn, thank you for coming before us. Basically, we have a lot of retirees coming up within the past year. Coming up now. My question is, what is the savings that the city will save in the retirement system versus someone that's been in the retirement system for quite a while? They pay less compared to a new employee. So with that retirement, what is the city gaining in dollars, you think? Basically, there's only going to be a gain if the person is a career employee and stays 30 years. Once the person retires for disability, it actually ends up a liability to the system if they don't, if they're not career employees. Basically, newer employees that are paying the higher percentage contribution rates are actually funding the majority of their own benefits by the time they retire. Between their contributions and the retirement system's investment income on them, it's actually funding the majority of their benefits going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. Do any other councilors have any questions? Councilor Guanasso.
Mr. Chairman, in reference to the retirement board, How many members are sitting as the retirement board members? How many members on the board?
On the board?
Yes.
There are 5, but that's statewide, well, other than the state retirement system and the teachers' retirement system. Any of the local municipalities, it's made up of 5 members. 2 of them are elected from among the active and retired employees. One of them is the person, by virtue of their office, who is holding the position of town accountant or finance director, or the equivalent of the town accountant, whatever the city happens to call them. Another one is a direct appointment by the mayor or the city manager, and the 5th one is appointed by the other 4 and has to be from the outside, cannot be an employee or a retiree from the city.
Thank
And
you.
that's, again, statewide.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. Any other council members? Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Chairman Arrigo. Carolyn, what was that amount again? 2 point what %?
The unfunded liability piece of the funding schedule is increasing right now at 2.45%.
Okay.
There are other pieces to the funding schedule that are actually, it depends, there's also a piece called the normal cost piece, which depends on salary increases. It's generally assumed roughly around 5%, but it's split between non-public safety and public safety, so the public safety is assumed at one rate. So there's more than one piece. The unfunded liability piece is what's being increased per year by 2.45%.
Does that also apply the same figure to the housing authority share?
The split among governmental units, the housing, the city, and the school department are actually, that's a % of payroll calculation. So once we get the overall unfunded liability piece, we say, okay, now we're going to split it. How much of this is attributable to your payroll, to your employees that are currently covered by the system? How much of it is school department and how much of it's city? And that's how the housing authority piece is split out, based on their payroll as a % of total payroll for covered employees in the system.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Any other councilors? No, I don't have any questions, so you're all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we will bring the Finance Director, page 25. Good evening, Mr. Anzoni. I don't know if you want to make a brief statement to go over any changes or anything in your budget, but I'll allow you a little bit of time, and then we can kind of get into any questions that folks might have.
Well, can I make a general statement about the budget presentation?
Sure,
okay,
sure.
And the differences. This year, you'll see the budget's a little bit different. I thought the mayor would be here to make these statements, but if you look at as you can see, the budget's a lot different, I think. The first part of it is that a result of a lot of this came from city stat meetings that we've had with the various departments, and then further with the involvement that we have with the Collins Center for Government at the University of Massachusetts. We have a consultant here on board for the time being, for the last almost year. It's been a very successful program, and we are looking to further it each and every year. Again, it's a work in progress, and what will happen is that each year I think you'll see a different change in the budget. Like your comments about the budget presentation, because you are the ones that have to review the budget, something that makes it more easier, or something that we've done that's made it any more difficult, we'd like to know about it. And we can have discussions at some time about that, so that we can work on making it more transparent and more understandable. Further, we also have been working with, I've been working with the, myself and the Mayor's Administrative Assistant, I've been working with the Harvard Kennedy School of Government for the City Stat program with Professor Ben, who is the guru of City Stat in this area. And we try to implant into this budget some of the lessons that we've learned from attending those different seminars. Further, we have included actuals. The actuals are in the budget for fiscal year 11, 12, and year-to-date for the various accounts. The actuals that we felt would be much more helpful, so you can trend what the expenditures were in that account, see how they're growing or lessening. Also giving you a year-to-date for fiscal year 13, so you have an idea of what has been spent this year and where the expenditures are going. Probably one of the major things that came out of performance-based budgeting is the way we set this budget up, and not only that is why the city has proposed, or the mayor has proposed, certain additions to staff, because we found where some of the weaknesses were, and I think that some of them the mayor thinks that they needed to be addressed, and that's why they've been addressed in this budget. You also have a organizational chart for each department, and the feeling here is that it gives an idea how a department is organized, and knowing what the department does is another thing where we have goals and accomplishments in there for the departments, because again, this is performance-based budgeting. We want to see how we could be helpful, not only to see what departments have accomplished in the past, and for you to see, and the public to see what departments have accomplished in the past, but also to understand where they're going in the future, and why before a lot of these departments during the budget hearings have gotten increases in different areas, but they had to justify why they wanted these increases to the mayor. The mayor would then say decide whether or not the person or that department would receive any additional help. He would also give his goals for the department and what he would like to see happen in the department, and then we translated that into the budget document. That's why I think in seeing all of this, it gives a much clearer picture than budgets in the past, and that's not saying anything about how budgets were prepared in the past, but I think this is a first step into a newer look for the budget, and myself and the mayor and the city auditor will continue working on the budget presentation to make it much clearer for both the city council and also for the public in general. So with that, on my budget, if there are any questions on that, or any comments, I would be here to answer those.
George, if you don't mind, I'll interrupt you for a second. Since we have the mayor here,
I'll take him first.
I'll take him up.
You can go.
And I'll also I'd like to recognize Councilors Janino and Councilor Reardon, who have also joined us tonight. So my apologies, Mr. Mayor. We started right on time, and I know you had let me know you were going to be a little bit late. So George kind of went through his spiel, and then I figured I'd bring you up just to give you an opportunity to address us. So.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for latitude. My apologies for having to come here a couple minutes late. It was actually good to hear from our Director of Finance, I'm sure, because obviously he had much to do with the budget, along with our city auditor and all of our department heads. So I'm not sure, because I'm just coming in now, what George may have touched on. If you want, I'll kind of go through basically a synopsis of the letter that I sent to you. It's been modified a little, and you've got some things probably that the city clerk's office should have given you as supplemental letters to this budget. There were a couple things, I think probably mainly because of the way we laid the budget out for the first time this year, that just came in late. So we did make some modifications, which I'd be happy to go over with you, or you can go over those particular changes with the respective department heads. But I'll just take a few brief minutes and thank you, for hearing us here tonight. Obviously, we delivered the budget to you as quickly as we could have. For those councilors that wanted it earlier, it will certainly be a goal of ours to provide the budget as early as we possibly can, prior to June 1st, if at all possible, next year. This year, I know you didn't get it until the 10th, so it does limit the time you have to look at it, and that is certainly not something that I or any member of my administration wants to see happen. So, we're always going to strive to get you as much time as possible to look over these figures. The budget as you have it right now is $154,060,170. I think it's up a little over 5% from last year. I did hear our Director of Finance, Mr. Anzoni, talk about the difference, and I'm sure all of you by now have had a chance to at least start to look over the pages. I think it's going to be at least, if not anything else, less cumbersome than to have to look at last year's budget and open up that and see, this actually will give you a snapshot the last few years and, actual numbers spent. So that as far as I'm concerned, is a good start to try to give the City Council more information and in an easier format for you to look at. That being said, as far as the budget itself, we did start to put our budget together using the city stat model that many of you now have come to become familiar with. We have been meeting monthly with 3 major departments, which is the police, fire, and DPW, in order to analyze their particular numbers, whether it has to do with overtime, whether it has to do with vacation, whether it has to do with sick time. It gives us a chance to monitor exactly where we're at and where we might be able to tighten things up, in future budgets. So one of the things that you'll notice in the budget, back in September of 2011, the city received a SAFER grant that allowed us to put on 10 firefighters. That grant was for an initial period of 2 years. Well, this coming September 2013, the grant runs out. And it had been the intention, I think, and I don't mean to speak for him, but I think Chief Doherty had anticipated a renewal of the grant to help continue paying these firefighters, and unfortunately that has not been the case. So rather than lay off 10 firefighters, we collectively put our heads together and figured out how can we keep them included in the budget from September of 2013 to June 30th of 14. So we were able to make the numbers work inside the confines of Proposition 2.5, and so they are, for your edification, still in the budget. It is not our intent to lay off any firefighters, okay? As far as the police department goes, they have been doing, I think, a terrific job. Last year we provided them with 4 additional police officers. They have had a problem in the past of when somebody retires, now they've got to go hire somebody, then send them to the academy, wait for them to come out of the academy, get them going. It's usually like a year in the making. So we have implemented a policy that they will pre-hire in anticipation of whether it's a scheduled retirement or some other departure from the department. We're trying to get them to be proactive so that we're not languishing with a lesser number than we would want, and also have to obviously pay that overtime in the meantime. If we can get a regular officer on the street, that's what we're trying to do. The other thing is, too, we're trying to hire civilians where appropriate. We've got police officers, that, for the most part are needed out in the street, and we've got them doing administrative functions, which has never made sense to me, and I know to many of you. So we were able to, again, within the confines of Prop 2.5, fill those positions with civilians as opposed to maybe hire an extra police officer, but the police officers that we had. So in other words, instead of hiring another police officer for someone who is retiring, we're hiring a civilian and then taking that police officer and putting them out on the street. So we thought that made, sense. And then I think going forward, we'll really see the benefit of having that civilian in an administrative function, because they're not necessarily going to go up in rank and steps and whatever else and get all the other stipends that go along, obviously, with being a police officer. So it just made more sense for us to look at it that way. And also an MIS person. Universally, both Chief Doherty and Chief Caffarelli had indicated that MIS was as important to them, if not more important, than putting another firefighter or police officer out on the street. Because the way that they respond, the tools that they use to be effective is all technology driven. And again, I know both departments are using, Chief Doherty is using a firefighter, and Chief Caffarelli is using a police officer to run their technology in their respective departments. And that really should not be the case. Again, they took the test and became police officers to perform that function. There's no reason why we should have high-ranking, firefighters or police officers handling MIS. Not to mention the fact that I'm sure Glenn can attest to, and I see Glenn DeRosa here, Glenn can attest to the fact that he could probably use some help here around City Hall too. So there'll be one MIS person responsible for both police and fire, working under the auspices of City Hall, okay? Well, that's what we're proposing in the budget. Parks and Recreation, there was an unfunded position, I believe, it's at the lowest level, I think a clerk typist, that we believe, based on some assumptions that we've made in conjunction with our new Parks and Rec Director, Michael Hinojosa, that they're one of those departments, kind of like inspectional services, that can actually generate money, they can actually make money. And so with a department like that, I mean, if we can generate revenue to help put another person on and make the programming that they have over there more innovative and better for our residents, whether it's for children or I'm hearing conversation now about maybe a resurrection of a men's softball league, whatever it happens to be. I'd like to see as much happen in that Parks and Rec department as possible, because obviously it adds the quality of life to our residents. We've got a little bit of an unknown here with the, we call it the rec center. It's the Regional Emergency Call Center, that we are joining forces with the town of Winthrop, at least initially. It's our city and their town joining together to have a joint 911 system. We are in the process of hiring an executive director. That should be happening very, very shortly, at which point they will be responsible for hiring somewhere between 10 and 15 call takers. There's still a lot of gray areas there. So we don't know. We've got some money that will come in the form of a grant to cover the executive director's salary, some possibly for the call takers, and then Winthrop's going to be responsible for their share. We're responsible for our share. I don't exactly know those numbers yet. And that, quite honestly, is still a little ways down the road anyway. So, but again, it's something that that will be coming down the road. So, as I stated in the letter, and I know I've gone on for a while now already, but this budget will continue to be a work in progress. We are shooting for to be in accordance with the guidelines of the Government Financial Officers Association of America, that very few cities and towns are able to qualify for, because of the quality of their budget, the information, and the way it's presented. That is going to be our goal, okay? So we're setting that goal for ourselves and for the city, so that we eventually will be one of those cities that's providing a top-notch budget, the best that we can possibly provide, okay? So that is pretty much it in a nutshell. I'd like to just, once again, because this may be my only appearance unless you need me after, before this council, to thank our department heads. They have been tremendous, not only with the extra work that had to go into this budget, such as setting up their organizational charts, providing goals, mission statements, things that they haven't had to do in the past, but they all really, virtually right down to a department head, responded tremendously. And it's a real departure from where they have been. Many of these department heads have been here for quite a while. And so while I personally expected quite a bit of resistance, I have to say it was quite the opposite. They've all been very, very receptive and very helpful. And even with these monthly city stat meetings, I think that the department heads that we're starting to work with now, Gene Doherty, Joe Caffarelli, and Donnie Goodwin, are all seeing the benefits from it. And I know you, Mr. Chairman, have worked with it before, so you understand what the benefits can be, particularly when you're up and running at a full scale like some cities and towns are. But we're just starting off, so I suspect we're no different than any other city or town that started off in their first year. And it's going to be, as I say, it's a work in progress. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Am I going over my budget with you tonight?
So I think the way that I would like to do this is maybe go over any big items, big questions that people might have, some general questions, and then we can get into your budget. Like, if anybody has any questions about your budget specifically. I do want to thank you for the product that you've put before us. I think that the seeing mission statements, seeing goals for next fiscal year really does help kind of put a more of a face on where the city's going. And I know that it's a little bit of a culture change for some folks to have to do mission statements, and I've dealt with this, when I worked in city stat, putting together org charts for people and having folks push back a little bit because it's a little different than what they're used to doing. So I understand where you could get a little bit of pushback, and it sounds like you didn't get that much, which is great. And I think it's a testament to the department heads that we do have. I do have a couple of questions just generally about the budget. My first, I think the biggest one, and it's after getting the sheet that you submitted today, how much in reserves are we using for the operating budget?
How much will we ultimately be using?
Yeah.
Well, as you may know, we're looking for a vote to get a premium holiday from the insurance committee. That has not happened yet. We're hopeful that it will. And assuming that does happen, we just put $2.8 million into stabilization because obviously we didn't want to lose it. So we had to sit it somewhere. But we may have to possibly go into it for $1 million, maybe, with everything else that we have coming in. So we're probably looking at about $1 million of that free cash that we sat in stabilization to help balance the budget.
Okay. So the recap that we got today shows the full amount of 2.8 going in, and it's on page 2. So I just want to kind of clarify.
Can I just explain that?
Sure.
Okay. What happens is that you're looking, can I just do that sheet then? Yep. Yeah. What you're looking at, if you look on page 4.
Yep. Page 2. Page 2.
Well, first look at page 4.
Okay.
Page 4 will show you that, of that sheet, will show you that it was appropriated to 2.8 million at whatever given date. It was the 10th. So now it's being used there. But then again, if you look on page 2, it's a wash. what's happening on page 2, you have to list it again. And it's revenue sources appropriated for particular purposes, not for the budget. That's what the line item reads. So it's not being used for the budget, it's being used for particular purposes. And the particular purpose is what we used it for, is put in the stabilization fund so that once you take a vote on it, it has to be reported so that it's now in the stabilization fund. It's not really being used to offset this budget as yet. If you go further down, you will look at other revenue sources appropriated specifically to reduce the tax rate. Looking at that, you'll see there's 0 there. So we haven't appropriated yet, or taking that into account, that we are going to use any part of that reserve to lower the tax rate or lower the budget. That's where we'll be coming out of.
Okay. So, and I guess my other question is the appropriations that are listed on page 2,
Right.
156 million,
Right.
is different than the
That's the addition, because
154.
that's when you're adding the 2.8 million, and then you're taking it out down the bottom. You're taking it out as a receipt down the bottom. So it's a wash of the way the free cash works on the recap sheet.
Okay.
Okay? So that's why it's up to 156, but the actual estimate, the actual proposed budget is 154 million. So that's how that works.
Okay. So, but regardless, it looks like we're going to have to use some free cash.
We're going to have to use some free cash, or some of our other reserves. There might be some other reserves that we can use instead, and that's what we're exploring now, depending on how much of the we're going to need. And so that's what we're looking at now. And as this is ongoing, we can have discussions about that. Sure. Okay.
Okay. Because I do have a concern about using stabilization money or rainy day money
Right.
when it's not really raining. We're adding, from my count, 16 new positions to the budget. And I would prefer if we didn't use stabilization money. I think every city in town would prefer not to have to use stabilization money. So that's kind of the way that I'm approaching it. I was a little surprised to see the 2.8 and figuring that there's some amount of stabilization that we're gonna have to use to fund, the operating budget. I think that's a practice that we should probably shy away from. My other, I guess, another question that I had was about, I know salary increases have been a big issue
Right.
as of late, and it looks like, and I think we talked about it, George, a little bit, that you'll see an increase from the 13 budget for folks who have
Settle their
who have gotten contracts,
Right.
right? There are some department heads that have a little bit above that, and I didn't know if there were kind of circumstances that would speak to those department heads. If there are any extra circumstances for folks to get, I know, and I think the one that jumped out, there were a couple, but the police chief, it looked like there was about a 15% increase.
Well, what happened with the police chief is that a contract was signed with him, and
He's under contract.
He's under contract.
So
Okay.
that's a contract that is negotiated between myself and the chief. So that was the negotiation that we, when we decided to, because with this, we negotiated that contract for probably 6 months.
Yeah.
We didn't sign it till after he was in. It had to be at least 6 months before we signed the contract with him, and that's what we finally agreed to and settled on.
Okay.
Same way that Mayor Ambrosino, when he set up his contract with Chief Reardon.
Yep.
It was the same method I used as he did. So,
Okay.
but yeah. I mean, he did. He definitely. I think he went up maybe 10,000 or 15,000, something like that.
Yeah, and there were a couple of others, and I can either go through them as their budgets come up, but I was just a little surprised to see some of the increases that were
But,
there.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah.
could just say one thing, listen, nobody wants to dig into stabilization, especially myself. There are some other sources that we might be able to tap into. I know we've got, although we're not going to, well, we just had this auction that generated over $700,000 to the city. So that in and of itself if we were able to use it in this current fiscal year, would probably come close, if not completely, help us balance the budget without going in. But unfortunately, we can't use it. That has to go straight to the bottom line. So that's the reason why, I mean, if I could have kept that free cash out any longer, I would have come and just asked, for an appropriation from free cash. But we had to park it somewhere as to not lose it. So, it's just the timing of everything. But as I say, that extra $700,000 in and of itself is going to come extremely close to balancing this budget. We also have Medicaid receipts that I'm not exactly sure how much there is there, but that's going to help us also. So, we do have some sources of revenue. If I had my druthers, I wouldn't want to have to go into stabilization, but there are, we're certainly not the only city, and, I believe the state is balancing on their stabilization. So, I mean, we kind of, we're in the same boat. We did now, the 16 new positions, I'm not sure where those are coming from. I know we have a couple of new positions. Like I shifted one from weights and measures over to inspectional services. That was a wash. We are adding one, I'm requesting one at the Parks and Rec.
So
Yeah, I mean, maybe we did add police, we added fire. I mean,
the numbers I got were from the budget where it says yes or no, new position. So I mean, I just went through. And,
well, I guess my question, Mr. Chairman, because I can't do it from memory, is, like what specific positions? Because there's nothing glaring other than a couple of, I mean, if they're like mostly in public safety, then I would say you're probably right. But outside of that, I'm not really sure where the other ones are. And if you wanted to go over it, I would. But otherwise, if you want to take it up with the respective department heads, we can do that as well.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. But
So,
I think just generally, I think it was a general statement that using stabilization money and, hiring or having new positions in the budget, kind of, if I could see using stabilization money if we had a massive cut in local aid, or if we needed to make up for some drastic change in a revenue source. But to be adding numbers to the bottom line, and adding employees and using stabilization, it just it just raises a question in my mind. I guess the other issue, or one of the other issues that I have is the lack of money for police and fire settlement and union contract settlement, and whether or not if we're going to get to a point where they settle their contract. I know I don't think there's any money appropriated in a reserve to pay for what their contract would be. So that was something that, again, is kind of a bigger picture.
There was a reasoning for that, and I'll tell you why. Because the fire department is in arbitration, and if we put a number into that budget, whatever number we put into that budget may somehow affect that arbitration. So we left it out. The mayor left it out, and it would be a better way to handle it because of the fact, although we noted a number of times the fire and police in the budget, there was no area that we put monies in for them or made any type of appropriation for that. It's just that we felt, well, the mayor felt it was better not to put it in because, again, they're in arbitration, and the fire is in arbitration, the police is not signed. We don't want it to give them a goal to look at either, so that could happen too. So if we lowballed it, then it could be insulting and cause even further problems in arbitration. So we want to be respectful to the fire department, and we want to be respectful to the police department.
Yep.
And that's why we didn't put a number into the budget.
But that ultimately, that's going to be a cost that we're going to have to pay for that
but that's why
that isn't, budgeted for.
Well, no, that's just it. It's not budgeted for, but that, we also took that in consideration. That's why we noted it a number of times in the budget.
And
that was the case.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, and those are very valid points. Yeah, I mean, of course, we're in arbitration with the fire department. The police department, I think, is just waiting for the fire department. I mean, and that's going to be somewhere down the road before we get to that final point. But, as far as, I mean, and this was my philosophy. I mean, I know there's numbers, there's numbers and then there's reasons for numbers. And, I mean, I don't want to get overly philosophical because we're here at a Ways and Means Committee meeting, but, you know, I mean, we do, I think, we are here because we provide a service to the taxpayers and the residents of the city. So positions that are added, wherever they were added, wherever they ever will be added, is going to be because I think it's going to be an asset to that department that in turn will better serve our residents. So I understand there's costs that go along with that, and the city council has to, you know, has to say, well, do I think we can afford this, or do I think we don't? I think the thing that I would look at, and the thing that I used to always look at is, I mean, if there's, you know, we've got budget busters. We've got things that every mayor that has ever served this city and will ever serve this city is going to have to, you know, recognize that there are certain driving forces that are going to increase the budget. These positions, and again, I'm not exactly sure the 16. I take you at your word that the yeses next to these positions are valid. But those positions in and of themselves, I mean, you know, are not going to, they're not going to be something that, you know, is in the big picture, in the $154 million budget that we're presenting, going to have any type of an impact on, really, I mean, it could have a minimal impact, but so, you know, I'm just asking you to weigh out whatever those positions are, you know, will our residents be served by these positions, and is it worth the money spent? If I didn't have to go in, you know, I'm not 100% sure that I will, but as best I can tell, probably up to $1 million out of that $2.8 million that I was so happy to get last year in free cash. What's taken the sting off is the 700 some odd thousand we got during that auction. So essentially, we're only really going back and asking for maybe 300,000 of that if we have to. I mean, it won't be 300,000 if my numbers hold true, what I think it could be. But knowing that the 700,000 is coming back and put back into stabilization, you're only really allocating an extra 300,000. So I just wanted to get that out because that seems to be the, you know, what you're, you know, talking about, not having to dip into the stabilization fund.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that, and you know, there are just some other questions about, I think, revenue that I have generally, and I know we got the pro forma. I think it would be helpful if we could see a revenue breakdown, maybe by department or by revenue source code. You know, in my mind, what I'm thinking about is rental car surcharge. I know it's mentioned in the budget. It looked like it was a high number, over $1 million. And I just want to make sure that the revenue that we have, I see the local receipts are at 10.3 million. They were at 10 million last year. So there are increases on the revenue side that I think we need to.
Well, the revenue side, I think I kept that the same. That was, when we did the budget, that was kept the same, that 10.29. I can look for it, 10.299, I think it was, to be the exact number. That was kept the same as last year's.
Yeah.
As far as the.
It was 10 million last year.
Huh?
It was 10 million last year.
Okay. It was how much?
What's that?
How much did you say?
It was 10 million last year.
I have the papers in there, but I kept that the same. The other part, I thought I kept it the same, so when we made the budget, when we made the pro forma. But the other part of it too, when we worked on the pro forma, but the other part of it too is we had in reserves already unused portion of the rental car surcharge. That's why we used it again this year. If we didn't have any reserves then, and we expect to continuously receive that monies from the rental car surcharge until the time of when when and if one of the rental car companies moves into the East Boston facility. So we took that into account, and those adjustments were made into the budget, but we had some unused portion, a good amount, I think it was about $1.2 million that we had a good portion used that we haven't used in the past, because what happened was the surcharge started as of a certain date. We used a portion of it each year. However, there was a buildup of a surplus of that. So now, in this budget, what we'll be doing is using that portion up.
Okay, and so I was wrong. I have the pro forma from fiscal year 13. our local receipts are at $9.5 million. So it's a little bit more than what we had budgeted for last year. I will open it up to folks, and Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Chairman Arrigo. I just want to explain, the mayor's doing the best he can out there. The bottom line is we're providing city services to its fullest. Fire department, police department, and public works, which we can use some help in there. You know, a lot of cities and towns are closing stations. They're not getting the full service as Revere is. And I don't care if it's a medical call or anything. You hang up the phone, there's an apparatus there. A lot of cities, there's a big delay. So my question is, Mr. Mayor, what is the future as far as city services, fire, police, and public works? Increase in personnel, and the police department, which the chief is doing an excellent job, both chiefs. Can we maintain the same standards where we are, which I feel we're in good shape? So that's my question.
Well, those are excellent questions, and actually, they're questions that that I think about almost every single day. You know, you're always thinking about what's the future going to hold, and you know, it's interesting because if you're a business, you can do things that can help your business and help your business grow, and meet certain challenges. As a municipality, we're subject to the confines of Proposition 2.5, so we can only go up 2.5% on property taxes every year. And so what do? We have to count on new growth. I know today, for example, we had Covington that was going through site plan review. I believe Councilor Powers sat in on that. And that's a $40 million development that's going to be hopefully taking place down on Revere Beach, where we'll derive, hopefully, a bunch of money from property taxes, hopefully excise taxes, and so we just keep on. We've had a very, very aggressive first year and a half kind of drive toward new development in the city. But the thing that I've learned, and the thing that unfortunately we kind of have to live with right now, is we're still coming out of kind of a serious economic recession. A lot of these projects that are being talked about and are being presented are going very, very slowly, but they're going, and as much as I'd like to see shovels coming out of the ground, all over the city, we have to take these projects one by one. So, I think the future, quite honestly, I think the future is very bright. And if we get through FY'14, hopefully next year at this time we'll have some better, more positive results that we'll have already seen. Money from Covington, for example, or possibly other new developments that have paid their permitting fees, and so I'm really very, very optimistic. Of course it's troubling when you as the chairman said, have to dig into stabilization, but I mean, sometimes to get through some difficult times, you do need to, at least I think, you need to kind of make some of those decisions. If it seems like it's going to be an every year balance the budget on stabilization, that would be problematic for me as well as for you. But as I say, the state has to dig into their stabilization fund. I mean, part of the reason to have that stabilization is there so that you can meet your obligations to get into the sunnier days. So, I'm very, very optimistic and confident that we will. I mean, did I expect to take a negative $200,000 local aid hit this year? I mean, I thought, for sure, local aid has been good. Last year, local aid was good. This year, yeah, it went up $200,000, but we got charged back $400,000 higher on our chargebacks. So we netted out negative $200,000. I couldn't have anticipated that type of scenario. I thought we'd get another maybe 400,000 in local aid. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. So I got to play the cards that I have in front of me, you know?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio, and I was reminded that you are not a member of the committee, so I will not make that mistake again. I promise my fellow committee members. I just have one quick comment, and a lot of it has to go back to some of the projections that we've gotten in the future, and I know that you have a vision for the city in the future, and some of the numbers that we got, because I was looking back at what we got for McKinley School, for the projections looking out, and as you said, you didn't expect to get a $200,000 cut in local aid. What concerns me a little bit also is that in the future, we could be looking at a precarious financial situation where we have projected out certain assumptions, and those assumptions aren't going to happen. And that's where my concern really comes from about using stabilization now, where who knows what's going to happen in a couple of years. And if we're in a difficult position, and it looked, I think everyone can agree that the numbers that we got for the McKinley School worked, but they worked if everything else works around it, right? And if we have a good couple of years as far as new growth, if we have a good couple of years as far as state aid, then we'll be okay. If we don't, anything could imbalance that. And my thinking is that we should be thinking about how to make sure we have as much stabilization money, in just in case something does happen in the future. But I think we kind of we're seeing the same vision for the city. It's a matter of getting there and making sure that the numbers work. I will recognize Councilor Janino.
Well, I believe Councilor Rigo, you asked and answered most of our questions, so I'm thankful for that. So we got a lot so far in the meeting. The one thing I was happy to see were the numbers for the police departments and the fire departments. Public safety really is the backbone of the city, and if you don't have safe residents, you can't have a productive community. So I'm really happy that everything went well there, and I look forward to seeing more improvements in their budgets as hopefully more money is allocated to our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I don't think I didn't. I've been saying right along that public safety, without question, is my #1 priority, and that's not to say there aren't other important things that happen in the city, but I think you hit the nail right on the head. Without public safety, I mean, if people don't feel safe, it really leads to a terrible quality of life for people. So, and like many of you have said, they respond, both our police and fire are top notch. So we're very fortunate.
Thank you, Councilor Janino. Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, if you had to put in order which ones you would want first and the increases that you submitted, do you have a list like that in mind that you would say to us, well, this means more to me than that? In terms of the 16 new positions that are being sought?
Well, right off the bat, I can tell you I wouldn't want to lose a firefighter. I mean, so I can say, I'm not sure if, I'm not sure, I'd have to go back in the budget and look at the 16, at the 16 positions.
I'm just talking if we had crunch time and we're saying that we can't possibly meet all these requests.
Yeah, I haven't, and let me just say this. I would not have put a position in the budget that I didn't think was necessary. Okay. So, and I understand your question. You're basically saying to me, look, if we were going to cut anybody, give us your lowest your highest and your lowest priorities, And I respect the question, but I guess I'd just say that every position in there I think is a valuable one. And because I would not just put a position in for the sake of just giving somebody a job. If there's not something that's needed to be done, or that I think can be done better with an additional person, then I wouldn't have put it in. And as I say,
I'm in
I mean,
agreement with
you know,
you. I think public safety is a priority, and I think that we ought to, you know, and you campaigned on that theory. I did myself, and most of this council did. So we're in agreement with that. There's, you know, and if in fact, if you could put more police on doing online, I would love to see that too. So,
well, that's by, well,
I mean,
you know,
I would think that's, and I think that what you said earlier makes every perfect sense in the world. Hire them, get them ready for the academy. When you get the option and it's there, you send them in, because the time delay is really an injustice to our citizens, you know, because we need as many police officers out there as we can, but it's because of these crazy technicalities that we're saddled with that we can't act faster, and a lot of people don't understand that. I never understood that until I realized when I was in this position that this is the functions you have to go through. And you submitted a budget, you know, and you were pretty lean in your department. I think you kept yourself within reason there, and so I don't have any issues with that. And obviously, you have oversight of the whole budget, and I will have questions throughout the rest of the budget. Sure. I don't want to and expect to have all these questions directed to you. I think that you've submitted you submitted your platform here. This is your budget. Now, your individual department heads would either have to, because they have to agree with what you wrote here.
Right.
And you asked, could you live with this budget? From previous experience being on the Ways and Means, I know you would have asked that. And so we can ask these questions of the individuals. We don't have to saddle you up with any more, in my opinion. We don't have to, because you've rendered your thoughts. They're right here. Right. Now we should we can either agree with it or disagree with it. And so,
well, as you know, Councilor, you know, you'll be speaking to each and every department head,
right,
and they're more than willing to explain their budgets and why we agreed on the number that's been presented to you. So, but if you did want to ask me a question,
yeah, I don't
specific,
think, my opinion,
I'd be happy to.
I don't think
okay.
it's necessary, because I think you've already put your opinion in writing. That's your opinion, and so now we have to weigh on that opinion and how we. I don't think I need to ask you any more questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. And just to clarify, and I can share, I don't want to go through these 16 positions now, but none of those positions are the firefighters that we're paying for, okay. Because those aren't new positions, right? So they weren't marked as new. These are just positions that were marked as a Y. So we can discuss it, you know, as we go through the next 2 weeks. But none of those are not firefighters. So I just want to. Okay,
well, I think, well, like I say, I'm not sure. I don't get, and I hope you can appreciate this. I don't get down into the N's and Y's and all that stuff. You know, like I say, you know, I didn't have a list next to my desk that had 16 names on it and say, let me hire 16 people. I'm sure as you go through this budget and you talk with the different department heads, they'll have reasons why. So, for example, if you've got a position in, like I already mentioned, Parks and Rec, okay, there's one there. There's, I think, maybe 3 positions within the police department that I said I want to replace with civilians as opposed to police officers, to put the, you know, so those may be considered new positions. I'd have to look through and see what, you know, but I feel confident that as you go through your deliberations with the department heads, they'll be able to describe what they're there for, and then it's up to the council what you want to, you know, how you want to handle it.
Thank you. Councilor Has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. First of all, I appreciate the start of the new format of the budget. I think will help us all out once we get into it and have comparisons, actual comparisons for prior years. It's a good start. I'm somewhat reluctant to use our stabilization fund, as you know, Chairman mentioned. We like to save that for a real rainy day. Is there any chance that, depending on the state budget and approval, that we may have to go to the taxpayers for an override?
It certainly would not be my desire to go for an override. We, you know, as you know, what we probably do if the council did not approve, you know, the appropriation out of stabilization, we would just start cutting bodies. I mean, that's all that, but I wouldn't go to the taxpayers for an override. I don't think, particularly in that set of circumstances. If our back was up against the wall and we had no other options, then yeah, then I would.
I'm talking about over the 2.5%. That's
Right. No, I know that, but I wouldn't go and ask for an override knowing that there's like 5 million, whatever we have right now currently in stabilization. And as I say, that 2.8 million was free cash up until just a couple of weeks ago. So,
Right.
I would have, I put it in stabilization just to park it somewhere. It seemed like the best place to put it. But, as far as, getting it reappropriated to balance the budget, that's certainly going to be my goal if I have to. And if I couldn't, then I'm challenged with laying people off.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yep.
Especially as a former mayor. We have let me go right to the question. As far as salary increases, which the city council has addressed, some people withdrew their name, other people were not entitled to it. Based on last year's budget and the 2% that I believe everyone received in the city, are there any salary increases in this budget in its entirety?
That were given out as pure raises to people?
As pure raises, adjustments?
No. There were no, unless they were negotiated through collective bargaining, or as a result of longevity payments or increase in longevity or something like that, there are no raises that I gave out, so...
But longevity is a separate item on the budget.
Right, but that would cause the salary to go up, though. You would see a...
But we do break out the salary, longevity, overtime, et cetera. All right? Also, you mentioned about a 5% increase over last year. Does that include the major 10%ers or 20 refuge collections and all of those, retirement, et cetera?
Oh, sure. Retirement's a big number.
Do we have factual figures in that?
Oh, absolutely we
Okay.
do.
We're not waiting from the state government, their budget?
No, we have factual figures on that. And that, as you know, goes up significantly
Right.
every year, unfortunately.
Have you considered, we discussed at the city council, you discussed it with us, as far as the litigation that we agreed to, as far as the police department? What are we planning to do with that?
We're really right now just waiting. So far, we haven't had to pay anything. We agreed to pay a number.
Right.
They don't seem so anxious to collect. It's okay. I'll let. Okay, so before
It's still under It's still under negotiation with the other party. I don't really want to say too much more because
Right.
they haven't agreed to anything that we've put forth. But you're right, we did agree to the settlement. We're just sort of discussing the terms of that settlement.
So our options are to either bond it or free cash, or stabilization, depending on what we may have available, correct?
Our budget for it.
Well, I don't think we have the capacity to budget 1.7. Do we? That's a lot of money.
That's. I'd have to sit down with our finance team and see. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I say, that's something that obviously you don't like to see or hear as a mayor. But it's. I guess when you reflect back on how poorly that old police station, the conditions that were kept there, to get out of it, as crazy as this may seem, for 1.7 million, is probably not a bad thing. Things could have been much worse.
Right.
If things went wrong. So,
George, you want to say something?
Yes, the two options we have in front of us would be the stabilization fund, or any other reserve that we have, or a bond of money. So those would be.
So as far as paying, we will be secured. We have funding to pay it.
We have funding to pay it. We have
Right.
funding to pay it. We have a mechanism to pay it.
Right.
Always
And hopefully it's not through the budget process because the taxpayers,
Well,
you know.
eventually it'll be through the budget process if you bond it.
Right.
But if you do it through a reserve, you won't have to.
Exactly. And one thing, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that the 10 police officers, fire department personnel that was going to grant us. We all know grants expire at a date certain. What are our plans from July of 14 on? It is the intention of the city, the mayor, to retain these 10 people.
Oh, it's certainly my intention to retain the 10 firefighters through this fiscal year. Next year, I guess I'd have to look and see what type of position that we're in, but, you know, it would never be my goal to go backwards, you know. I know that, you know, we've seen those departments, particularly the police department, keep going in reverse for a number of years, and much to the detriment of our residents. So it's never going to be my goal to go backwards, but again, we're within the, we have to live, you know, we have to kind of, you know, use the money that the city has, and if it doesn't look like we're able to keep not only firefighters, but, you know, people in any positions, we have to respond.
We have to live within our means.
We have to live within our means,
as our
absolutely.
taxpayers have to. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Has. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at the budget right now in front of me, and I see one of those positions in the police department is a detail officer. And that, in the past, has been done by sergeants, even a captain at one time. Will that be the only person performing that function in the police department, a detail officer, so that we can, as you say, get more police out on the street?
Yes, absolutely.
So there'll be no other officer as such assigned to that position? Okay. That's my first question. My next statement is that, you know, where we have this judgment against us, and, you know, this may be structured out, which it could be budgeted over the years. I don't think we're sure of that now. But my feeling with free cash has always been for a one-time expenditure, whether it would be a ladder truck for the fire department or paying a settlement like that, so that you didn't have to bond it and then go to the debt service on the end of that bond, which would be considerably more. I mean, it's like, you know, you don't, if you need a car, you buy a car, you may finance, but you don't finance your groceries, so to speak. So to me, that's my idea of free cash, using it for one-time expenditure only. And the other thing I like the format of the budget. I like the fact where you can look at last year's appropriation versus this year's appropriation. I think that's great. The only thing I would have liked to have seen with this budget would have been a cover sheet explaining each new position, what the position was being used for, how it was going to improve the operation of that particular department, and also how in that department there was going to be a generation of revenue or a savings because of that position. And then I just have one question for Mr. Anzoni, if you would.
Councilor Powers, if I could just say one thing, though, and you know, it's, as I reflect back, I mean, I feel like I have to regret asking the council to put the $2.8 million into stabilization. That was free cash. That was not.
I understand that.
That was not, you know, that was not marked necessarily for stabilization.
It was put there as.
I put there, and now a few weeks later, I'm being told, well, no, it should. I mean, that was really just a request to put the money somewhere so we wouldn't lose it. And now I feel like that every nickel of free cash that we had was just marked for stabilization, and there's this appetite not to want to touch it, when free cash has been used in the past quite a bit for the budget and otherwise. So I don't know why I feel as though that now, because I asked the council to just put the money there, you know, while
temporarily,
you
say. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I thought that was understood when I came up here.
I'm just relating to you my feelings with regards to the use of free cash, how I think it should be used. That's all. The question I have for you, Mr. Anzoni? As you know, several years ago, I advocated the purchase of point-of-sale equipment for
Right.
each department.
Right.
Okay? And I did it because I felt that people coming into City Hall, whether they paid $1 for a copy or $300 for something else, they should get a receipt, time-stamped, and that receipt should go right to a central, your collector's office.
Right.
Now, what I'd like to know is how many departments are using that system now, actually have that system set up in them, and how many don't, which ones don't?
Okay.
And do we have any machines sitting around that aren't being utilized?
No, we don't have, first off, we don't have any machines sitting around not being utilized. What we do have is we are implementing, because we're doing a conversion as we speak, and we have been for the last 6-7 months, and we'll be continuing for the next couple of months, a conversion from a Unix platform for the real estate and personal property and excise tax collections, real estate and personal property and utility billing, and we have installed recently the POS machines in the collector's office. We'll actually see a new type of billing coming out with the system. You'll be getting a different tax bill altogether, water bill and a personal property bill. So that's been changed. The other part of it is that there's 8 other departments, major departments, that have POS machines. And what it does is it actually, when it's recorded, it goes into the centralized system, counting system in the auditor's office once it's recorded and once they release it. So we have that tracking. So we have that tracking going on. And there is a receipting with, and it's in the policy that they hand out the receipts, that there are receipts being handed out, and that those major departments that do handle cash especially definitely have them in there, and checks. But a lot of them, maybe a few that may have dribs and drabs, but the machines are expensive, and we're trying to implement them during the budget that we have in front of us.
I guess my question is, which departments don't have them?
Well, let me tell you, I have 8, so I can tell you departments that do. We have them down in, we have them in the treasurer's office, the collector's office now has them. The clerk's office has them. The Parks and Recreation Department has them. The Fire Department has one. The Police Department, I believe, had one, but there wasn't a need for one, but we're looking at that, and there may be one going back in there. And then we have inspectional services, both building and health have one. So those are the ones that have them that I can remember off the top of my head. And then beyond that, we have...
How about the library?
The library has one. And off the top of my head, I can't remember the 8. Pardon me? Park and Rec, I said, yeah, Park and Rec. DPW, okay. Elders, okay. And we don't have any machines sitting around. That's the only... We wish we did, because we utilize them, but...
Yeah, because I honestly think that, and I remember when we talked about this several years ago, the machines purchased, and they sat around for a while, and they weren't utilized until it was brought up at the council again. I honestly feel that people get a better level of comfort when they come in and they pay $5, $10, or $200, and they get a receipt from the City of Revere with the date and the time stamped on it.
I'm in agreement with you, Counselor, and we've been installing them. One of the problems was that, if you remember, implementing these things, the City Hall staff was cut back to 4 days a week, and then after that went back to 1 day a month, and we didn't have additional help and assistance, and especially in the MIS department, and there were other things going on at the time. So we had to try to space it and prioritize it, but we have gotten it in there. I think the biggest thing is going to be the one coming in the collector's office, because when you come to the window now, what's going to happen is they're going to there's going to be a barcode reader on your bill. It'll be swiped, and when it's swiped, your account will come right up. And when your account comes up, they'll see whether or not, immediately at the window, whether or not you owe any other taxes if you're paying the full amount, and then you'll be getting a receipt. They'll print out the receipt. But they also can, and it also be at that point in time, it's entered into the system, the payment is entered into the system at that time instead of going into a batch and being done at a later date. So that process is going to be a lot smoother. But as I said, that's ongoing, and that's something that we're trying to do now. And as I said, Glenn has worked tremendously. Glenn DeRose has worked yeoman's work in order to help assist the city in actually implementing this. We had how many meetings on every Tuesday for 2 hours on a Tuesday, myself and Glenn and the computer company, to make sure the conversion was going well and that the data had converted over correctly. Between myself and Glenn and the various personnel, especially my assistant Renee Conti in the collector's office, they've all done yeoman's work, and I appreciate so much what they've done. The other part of it too, that's one of the reasons why the mayor has put into the budget an assistant for Mr. DeRosa, because of the fact that if you look at the school department, they have 5 people in their MIS department, and we have 1 person, and we have a lot of things going on here. And yes, I agree with you 100% that people, when they come in, they should be able to, one, if they haven't paying a real estate or a personal property or a water bill, they should be able to have a receipt and an excise tax bill or anything they're paying the city for. But it's also part.
I was basically thinking of all the satellite offices.
Right, those two. Those two we have. So we have those coming in, and that's Public Works especially looking at that.
You say looking at it. Is that something that's in existence now?
Yeah, we are in existence looking at all the ones that we have. It's some departments, some departments don't collect $200 a year. So
if I go into the library tomorrow or inspectional services,
they'll be able to give you a receipt.
I'll get a printed receipt from a machine generated by a machine.
Yep, they have a machine down there. They should be giving you a receipt. In fact, I think we have 2 machines down there, one upstairs and one downstairs.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Councilor Patch. No? You're all set? Councilor Penta.
We're doing okay.
Thank you. Just going over a few things that were stated here, it seems like that's why you have 11 councils. It seems like different people in different wavelengths here. But going through, I went through quick the whys in different departments. I mean, you have one in inspection services, a wire inspector, which we've had for years, and has a Y there saying no. That is not really a new position.
I think the reason is because, as you know, Mike Connolly retired,
Right.
and so now he's taken on that position on a more, it's no longer coming out of the fire department salary because he retired. So we had to put him in. He's still the same person that's been the wiring inspector.
No, I understand what it's there for, but it's really not a new person. It was
Right.
always there. So I can see why, there's 16 names. I do see down in the rec center, children, seniors, and everybody here also says public safety. Those are the 3 main things that we should
Right.
be giving service to: children, seniors, and also public safety throughout for everybody.
Right.
And I think, those are where your new positions are. And one thing, as far as the rainy day fund, I thought you did a good maneuver putting the $2.8 million in the reserves, because then you can put it wherever you want. So, I mean, if you didn't put it there and use it somewhere else, people would say, well, you really didn't touch anything in rainy day fund. So I can understand where you're in a rock and a hard place, putting it there, not using it, and then down the road using it. There's several things that were mentioned up here. One was still going on with the solicitor was up here speaking about. You could use some for that. You could use some towards the tax rate. There's multiple things. So I think it was a great maneuver on your part, putting it there. And the 11th hour, we can put it where we really want to. So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. But that being said, I know there's other department heads here, so I'm going to cut myself short on this.
But you just talked on a few, and maybe that's some I can clarify, because like I say, this will be probably the last time I speak on the budget here tonight. So, yeah, I mean, Mike Connolly, I mean, I think for the money we're paying him right now, I don't know you be able to find a wire inspector, that would be the wire inspector for a city for that price, or
Yeah,
for,
17
for that
hours, I agree.
salary. As far as elder affairs, maybe people don't know, but, we're bringing in a new director of elder affairs, and so we're trying to get him some time in with Al Morelli before he retires, so we put that spot in. Technically, it's a new position, but, we felt it was prudent to do so he'd be able to take over right when Al leaves without missing a beat, and actually give Al a hand over the next 6 months before he
Right.
offers his retirement. So those are all. I'm sure they'll be able to explain. Maybe not so much Mr. Morelli. I don't know if he'll be able to explain that. Like that budgetary move. So I'm glad you actually brought that up. That's just to transition. The new, who will ultimately be the new director down there, into the position, but while having the benefit of having Al Morelli, help train him.
Well, my point is you're going in the right direction. In other words, the children in the city can't take care of themselves, and the seniors need as much help as they can get. Council Powers brought a good point up. I mean, like you said, you refine this budget as you go on. This is great what you did this year, and maybe next year you put in, why, any whys you have in here, put why, with a cover letter to it, and we probably have no questions to ask, but it's something to look down the road. But
Right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Point well taken.
Thank you, Council Penta. Council Ridden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of points, I guess the good points first. I do believe that this budget information is much more readable, much more helpful in many ways. And I'm particularly glad to see that we've incorporated some review by way of accomplishments and by way of goals. The only negative comment I have is kind of mirrors what Council Powers suggested, that when, for instance, I'm just going to use Parks and Recreation as an example, when the budget goes up by 33%, it seems to me that's kind of a red flag in a lot of ways, begging for more detailed information. And I know you do list some goals in here, but in your letter that you sent to us today has a lot of generalities in it. And I'm hoping Michael when he comes up before us has an opportunity to get into more specifics. But when you see that kind of an increase, I think, and it's not dollar for dollar, obviously, but percentage-wise, and I just take it as an example because it's a relatively simple example in here, it would be, I think, hopefully maybe next time around we can get a little bit more specific about when we're looking for, kind of drastic increases in what we've been doing all along, giving us a clear idea of what specifically is going to be required to accomplish these goals. And so perhaps, and I'll leave it at that because Michael may be able to come up here and be very specific. At least I hope he will. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Council Ridden. Councilor Janino.
Thank you. I just had one other point that I wanted to touch on that I forgot to speak on earlier. As for some of the new positions, I know that a lot of them, like you said, are just kind of technical changes for people that are already doing the positions. But in terms of like new departments, like we have a few completely new departments that are going to be coming on with like all the technological advances that we have going on in the city. I want to make sure that with all the hits that the residents have been taking in terms of water and sewer and these inevitable fee increases, that we're offering these positions to Revere residents first, and that they're going through all the interview processes. Because I really believe that with the number of people we have in the city, we have hundreds of people qualified for each of these positions. So I really want to make sure that we're starting here before we have to go anywhere else.
Absolutely, and as in fact, if I were to go outside the city, I would have to come before the city council and ask for your approval anyway. If I were, if I did have to go outside the city, it's clearly in all of our best interests, including our community, to hire from within if we can. So, but that's a very good point, and believe me, I try. I've got probably as thick as this downstairs of resumes of people that are looking for work, and believe me, if I could put them all to work, I'd love to. But unfortunately, it's impossible. So, and the other thing that we haven't talked about, and we can talk about at a later date, but it's been brought up about, some councils have talked about the future. What does the future hold? What's next year? I mean, we all know this time next year, we'll be talking about we're either going to have a casino at Suffolk Downs or not. So that is kind of the thing that's floating around out there that could be a complete game changer for these discussions. And as I say, right now, as far as the city of Revere is concerned, all we can do is wait and hope that the mayor of Boston signs off on his agreement. I know we did a joint op-ed a couple of months ago where he and I both agreed that this was about jobs. And I was sincere about it when I signed off on it, and I trust that the mayor of Boston was. And it really is about jobs. There's people that are in a desperate need of wanting to go to work. And so, but unfortunately, there's only one person left that needs to agree to sign off before we can go forward with putting these people to work. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janino. Do any other councilors have questions? I don't see anyone. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time. I know we took a lot of it. And I appreciate the amount of time that you've given us, and I think that the document and the information that you've provided is a lot better than it's been in past years, and I look forward to looking into it and hopefully seeing it progress even further. And I think there's a lot of good in the way that it's set up, and looking at, being able to look at actual numbers from the last couple of years is very helpful. And I think that you've done a great job. You and your team have done a great job putting this together. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the council's questions and consideration. And as always, as you go through this, I'm available myself with any questions that you might have, and obviously everybody here behind me is there to answer questions as well. Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, we will go back to the Finance Director, which is page 25. Mike.
Hello? Yes. If you want to go position, first turn the page and then go 26, or how would you like to do this, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I know I have my questions ready.
Okay.
So I don't know if we want to just go through that. I think probably the best page to look at is the page before 25 with the actuals and the recommendation for fiscal year 14. There are a couple of items that just stand out to me. Workers' comp, compared to and I guess my first question, actually, I should have asked it a while ago. The actual year-to-date when is that? Is that as of May 1st or?
I think it's April 30th.
April 30th, okay, all right. Just want to confirm that, because I figured it was either April or May.
Right.
So I'm looking at the workers' comp line. It's budgeted right now at 417. Last year was 325. I didn't know what the reason for that increase was.
Well, it's the increase of the number of cases. It's a very hard account to predict because you don't know what injuries are going to occur. And after reviewing what's been going on and has been going on in the transfers I had to request, I increased it up to this amount to see that it doesn't run into a deficit position again.
Do we have a list of the people that are out on workers' comp?
I do, but I don't know if I can make them public, but I can see. I do have a list. There's about 17, 18 of them, right.
And so that number's gone up from last year?
That number's gone up a bit. We have a couple long-term situations. I've actually had few of the long-term workman's comp people being over a 2-year period. A couple of them have been actually called in by our company that serves the CCMSI, and we've also had an attorney talk to them to see whether or not we could move them onto a disability retirement with an offset to workman's compensation. However, to buy them out, it's a tremendous amount of money. It's millions of dollars. So that's something the city can't get involved with. But, you know, we look at these things and say, okay, what can the city afford? And since I've been here, I know that I don't think there's been anybody that's ever been bought out of workman's compensation. It's just the laws of the Massachusetts, and then again, the case that you provide showing whether or not the employee is actually injured. We just don't let them go on an injury. We also have them, you know, re-examined. Also, other, which I don't want to, other. I don't want to mention it here, but in an open forum. But there's other measures that we take in order to make sure that the person that is claiming workman's compensation is actually unable to continue to work. So that's what we're looking at, the workman's compensation.
Okay. And the workers' comp unemployment.
The unemployment
jumped up quite a bit.
Well, one of the reasons is that there was a case of I believe, a Linfield fireman, and when they turn 65, they're forced to retire. So for fire and police, where you're forced to retire in uniform service, what happens is at times the police and firemen are now taking advantage, waiting until 65, and now taking advantage of that, that they can receive retirement plus receive workman's compensation.
So
every policeman.
So they're getting workers' comp and retirement?
No. They get not workman's comp, unemployment and retirement.
Okay.
They get unemployment. We call workman's comp unemployment, but it's totally unemployment.
But so workers' comp unemployment is if they go out.
If they go out
with an injury,
retire.
Right?
No.
Oh.
Workman's comp is unemployment specifically.
Okay.
Unemployment is when if you, say for example, we laid you off and you don't have a new employment, we have to pay any employee unemployment because we're self-insured. The portion where a police or a fireman is forced to retire at 65, the stance has been taken by the state that they are eligible for, they can collect their retirement and collect unemployment. So that's what's been happening. So I had to take that into account, look at who is up for retirement, and I increased the numbers by that amount. And there's nothing the city can do about it.
Yeah, I'm just surprised to hear that they can collect both unemployment and a pension.
Well, there was a case in the news, I think it was Linfield. I'm pretty sure it was Linfield, that fireman, and the city of Linfield, the town of Linfield actually took him to court, and the person won. So
do we have any police or fire that are retiring, that are forced retired at 65?
Do we have any collecting
this year?
Coming up in 2014?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a couple.
And that's what this.
And plus the ones that retired near the end of last year, I still have to pay them a number of weeks in order to fulfill their obligation under unemployment laws.
Okay. And finally, my last question is on, and it sounds really minute, but office supplies look like they went up over last year and your last couple of fiscal year actuals. Anything in particular that you're
Yeah, there
looking
was. We had a new air conditioning system installed in the air conditioners that takes care of are the central air conditioners and the MIS suites, which are 3 offices there, and, well, the MIS suite, 2 offices there, the training room, the green room, the treasurer's office, and the computer room. We are looking for a maintenance contract, and the maintenance contract went up because of the different type of air conditioners we put in, and that's why that was raised.
Okay. And then finally, just, I guess it's more of a comment, but I know our health insurance has gone up for the city,
Right.
obviously. Has there been, and I know this has been talked about before, and former Mayor Ambrosino had been able to negotiate a deal with unions that
Right.
kind of kept us out of GIC.
Yes.
But have there been any, I mean, I'd like to hear from you about your thoughts on, the cost benefit of going into GIC and whether or not, and some other communities that have been doing it have, realized some big savings, and although the initial PR campaign to actually go into GIC can be a little bit difficult with employees, they've realized soon thereafter that the changes are not that big from what their original health plan was. So I didn't know if there was. My sense is that there's not really that much of a cost benefit to going to GIC, but if you could maybe talk about that a little bit.
Well, the former Mayor Ambrosino negotiated with the various unions a designer plan, and the plan was designed to be somewhat similar to GIC. The city saved quite a bit of money on over $1 million on that plan. Then the teachers were on their, didn't come over until last year, so the city realized the savings. But as far as right now, where we're on this designer plan, I believe the savings isn't as great as they would have been if we were just on a plan. We also have in place a public employees committee, so we accepted that under the law, and that will be in existence for, I believe, another 2 years. And we'd have to pass that through that public employees committee in order to move to GIC. As of right now, I understand that the will of the various unions is not to move to GIC, and at this time it's not even being proposed by the administration because of the fact that we have that PEC in place, and also we also have taken advantage of going to a designer type plan. And whereas the cost for medications has gone up for those of you that may have it, or people in the city that may have it, and visits and so on and so forth. So, the city has saved quite a bit of money by doing that. Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Councilor Guanasso.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the big numbers here, George. I'm not worrying about the smaller stuff, but the thing that strikes me, and I'm going to touch upon the group health again.
Right.
We were led to believe that a couple of years ago when we experienced a drastic increase in our payment, meaning those people that pay the health insurance as employees, they went from a $5 copay to a $25 copay, and they went from a non-copay when you had an operation to $250 per operation. And now I see that we're getting a tremendous increase at $3.3 million. That's a lot of money for people who a couple of years ago, not just 2 years ago, were asked to contribute more, take lesser benefits, and pay more on both ends of it. Right. And yet the increase in premiums, $3.3 million.
Well, here's the reason for that, though.
Astronomical.
Yeah, it is. But the reason for that is because last year when we submitted the budget, we included the premium holiday, which we requested of the employees. This year we put in the full amount without lessening the premium holiday. So if they do give us that premium holiday, the amount in that account will be lessened by about $1.2 million. So you'd be down to probably the $15 million into $14.9 million, somewhere around there. Am I correct on that? Yeah, $14.9 million. So you'd see probably an increase of about $700,000 in actuality. But that I know that doesn't seem as clear as it should here. But what happens is, in actuality, we have to, according to the law, submit the total amount of the budget, unless we already have the premium approved. So now we're sitting and waiting for that premium to be approved.
Theoretically, we could have a tremendous amount of money unfunded in that particular line item at year end.
Right.
And the other thing that concerns me is Medicare $400,000 increase? I mean, that's a tremendous, we only spent $868,000 last year.
Right.
That's almost 50% of the budget.
Well, what we're looking at is, you have to look at new hires. What that is for every employee, and it says it here, but I just want to reiterate it, is that for every employee hired after April 1st, 1986, according to the Omnibus Act, is required, the city pays 1.45% of their total salaries, and the employee pays 1.45%. That has increased. I think we're projecting a slight deficit in that account by the end of the year, and so we increased it, and every new person hired, both city and school, comes onto our budget. So that's what part of the other part of the problem is.
So we have a possibility, just the two line items, of experiencing quite a bit of leftover monies at year end in that particular category. And so my way of thinking is, in setting a budget now, this might be an area that we can reduce by a couple of million, and if we have to go into it later on, we can. We used to do this quite honestly in the George Collette era, when George was sitting up in Ways and Means.
Right.
He used to take $2 million out of that faithfully every year.
Right.
And that's a grab a line at the in budget time, and it gets attention that we cut the budget $2 million.
Right.
But before year's end, we're putting it back.
You're putting it back. Right.
But I'm just thinking, for projection's sake, if we took $2 million out of $3.3 million that's increased there, we still might be able to live with that if, in fact, the numbers come back pretty good.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Well, what happened was is when I handed, if you look at the pro forma statement, when that was distributed, it shows the what would happen in the best scenario. If we receive the 1.2 million, let me just get that in front of me, so we can talk about that a little bit, because it's been brought up. If you look at the, let's see here. Okay, my pages got messed up, excuse me. If you look at the recap sheet, the former recap sheet, you'll see that what we're looking at, and you'll see by the mayor's letter, it shows that we're about $1.5 million over budget. And to lessen that $1.5 million, what we've done is, in the event that we get a premium holiday, we can then lessen it down $1.2 million, which leaves about a $300,000 overage between the levy limit and the what we have to raise. So that's the $300,000 we're talking about using out of some sort of reserves. However, if we do get that, if we do receive that premium holiday, a portion of that, because of the education reform, we have a number that we have to reach for our foundation budget and with the school department, and we have to make certain that we give X amount of dollars back to them. In years past, the school department would front load that on their Schedule 19. However, this year they didn't. So what would happen is that if we get the premium holiday, we'd then have to come up with about $600,000-$700,000 more, and then put it into the school department budget. Okay, but that's how that works.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nasso. Councilor Has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George, I had a couple of questions here, going page by page.
Okay.
Overtime, is that for both departments?
Yes.
Is there any overtime paid out of any other account?
Any other, pardon me, any other
We
other
allocate
account?
$5,000.
No, but historically what's happened is that the overtime in the account, it requires, two departments require a lot of overtime because of the fact that, one, we have, in those both departments, we have timelines. We probably have the most timelines of any other departments.
Yeah, budgets.
Budgets,
Water bills
payroll,
and-
water bill, all these things we have to do. So we have to put, when it calls for things to be done, we have to put the people on overtime in order to get them, paid.
So there's
And also get the job done.
Right, so there's no pay to any employee other than from this one account
from
here?
that one account. Whatever goes through that account, what goes into the
Okay,
overtime.
all employees are being compensated for their overtime, correct?
Right.
Moving on to the summary of supplies, et cetera. We reduced by $27,000. What are we doing there?
Did you skip over a page, or did I?
Well, it's on page 28, the first
28,
item.
excuse me, okay.
Materials and supplies, and then miscellaneous office supplies. tax
Yeah,
bill.
as I said, the office supplies, what happened there is we got a maintenance contract for some of the repairs for the air conditioning. As I said, there's 3 central units that I have to maintain in my budget. One for the MIS, one for the computer room, and one for the treasurer's office. So with that, the amount of the maintenance contract, especially we put the new type of air conditioners in, just to make certain that the computer room wouldn't get overheated and protect the equipment, I had to increase the budget by that amount.
And the last item, Mr. Chairman, will be the next item. What are we doing with the summary of charges and expenditures, the control account, tax title? What are we doing with tax title?
Tax title? Tax title is being as aggressive as we possibly can. I was looking at the figures today. As of right now, at the 1st of May, 1st of June, we already have a 98.5 tax collection level, and the rest of that goes into tax title. It's as aggressive as always. Actually, if you look at one of the major reasons why you get free cash,
Yeah.
not only to do with the balance in the budget and receivables and so on and so forth, the higher the amount of delinquent taxes, as you know.
Exactly.
Okay, as you know. The higher amount of delinquent taxes collected in tax title raises that amount that we receive in free cash the next year. So we keep a lot of pressure. In fact, we're probably one of maybe 3 or 4 cities. No, actually cities I don't know any of, but out of the larger towns, we're probably 1 out of 3 or 4 that turn over the tax title before the year end. And the purpose of that is by turning the delinquents into tax title, it strengthens the face of our balance sheet, and then it also starts the tax collections again on a timeline. Tax collection for those delinquent taxes, it puts it on a short leash.
Right.
So that's what we do.
I know that when I became mayor, we had a free cash deficit of 5.2 million.
Right.
And we both got together to see how we can address it, and it worked out extremely well.
And we got it down in 2 years to 126,000.
Right, exactly. A lot of hard work from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Has. Any other councilors have any questions? George, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George, going back to the same question on the tax title.
Yes.
We recently had an auction. How much did the city take in on that auction?
The city realized $735,000 on the auction. And what happens according to law, what happens with the auction, the monies can't be respent or reappropriated, so what they do is they drop to the bottom line.
Right.
So now you have the surplus down to the bottom line, and when you close your books at the end of the year, that could purely be, depending on how the books close, that could purely be going to free cash. So it's a great positive for the city to have these things.
I mean,
In
that's
fact, I did the figures today, just looking over one of our statements, over the past 7 years, or 8 years, the city took, by doing these type of auctions, have took in an additional 1.7 million. So it's 1.7 million that's not budgeted for, and it also quickly rolls the property back onto the tax rolls, so you don't lose any taxes on the properties. However, the properties haven't been closed yet, and once the properties are closed, I'll give you a list of the people that purchased them, and I know I got this request from the city clerk today, but the people that purchased them and the amount they purchased them for. So you'll have that when they close. And they're going to close before the end of the year.
Yeah, very good. That's credit to you and your department, George, to get that kind of money, revenue in the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. With that, I think you're dismissed.
Okay. I'll be here the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Anzoni. Next up, we will go over the city auditor's budget, page 35. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So the only question I have is about the insurance line item.
Okay.
And I know it's increased a little bit. It looks like it's over the last couple of years of actuals. Have we had any changes with insurance?
Well,
As far as
there's-
insurance?
There's a couple of things. We got an estimate of what we thought the insurance was going to be. This is one of those line items we don't really know. We start to find out about now what the policy cost is going to be for next year. So
Yep.
we base this on estimates when we talk to the agent and we get some ideas of where we're going to be this year. They projected the number to be higher than what it has been over the course of the last couple of years. And we've also recently switched or changed our insurance agent from Bocchino Insurance to Marabito Insurance. But these numbers were determined just before that came about.
Okay.
So I should know what the real numbers are going to be soon. I just don't know yet.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Any other councilors have any questions? Councilor Janino.
I just want to thank you for your patience tonight waiting for us.
Oh, sure.
You're running a very lean budget, so I really don't have any questions on the budget, but thank you for your patience.
Okay.
It's a long night.
Yeah, that's okay, thanks. Is that it?
Councilor Powers.
Yes, Laurie, I've looked over the salaries, and I can see they're all pretty much in line with the 6%, which would reflect the additional Friday. Is that correct? On
That's
there?
correct, yes.
Two, and then the Friday. And other than that, I don't see anything here that stands out, but I want to
Yeah.
take this opportunity to acknowledge the fact that I'm sure you worked very hard putting this budget together, as the auditor always does,
Well,
and as you
thank
have
you.
in the past, and I want to compliment you for that.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. Thank you for all your hard work.
Any other questions?
I know how difficult budget season can be, and now you get to enjoy the summer a little bit.
Lots of fun. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, next up, we have the city solicitor, page 20. Thank you for your patience also. I think I'll have to
Happy to
seal
be
that.
here.
Yeah.
My glasses.
I don't have too many questions about your budget, but there are a couple of comments I want to make.
Sure.
And I know that and we've talked about this a little bit, the outside legal services, and the idea of either a cost benefit at some point of whether or not spending, this year for fiscal year 13 actual year to date, we've spent $183,000. And that's obviously a little bit more than what we've spent in the last couple of years, and mainly due to the fact that we had some different cases going on. But at a certain point, I wonder if the $100,000 that we spend in your budget, and I think there's a $45,000 line item in the mayor's office for labor relations, that at some point, is it more of a cost benefit to have one or two more bodies that work for you full time, and even getting a specialized labor council to help out with city negotiations with unions and be able to kind of beef up your department a little bit. I know you would probably appreciate that. I want to kind of throw that out for the members of the committee to think about, because we do spend, when you add up the outside legal services, labor relations and other departments. We're getting a specialized service, but I think we could find that, and we can maybe do a little bit more and give you a little bit more flexibility as far as some of the things that you're able to do, and looking at your kind of goals and objectives over the next couple of years. It's something to kind of think about. With that said, there's not too much going on in your budget. The one thing that kind of jumps out a little bit is education incentive. It's just that it was more, a little bit more, and I assume that's due to the fact that the Fridays that are put back in people's salaries will increase their education.
The salary and the educational incentive,
Yeah.
When the
Yep.
Fridays were closed, it was all reduced, as well as longevity too, I think.
Do any other councilors have questions? Oh, okay. Councilor Guanasso.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed that looking at the budget, the city solicitor doesn't make a heck of a lot more than the first assistant. And I'm wondering why that is, and if in fact on the line item for the city solicitor, did you get an increase? This reflected an increase for you this year?
I was surprised at the number. I thought my base was 72. I don't know where the 75 came from. As you can see from last year, it was 70, which I assume was because of the Friday closures. I honestly don't pay attention to my salary in terms of specifically what I'm paid every year and how much. Oh, sure.
That's a combination of the opening the last Friday of the year, plus the 2% for 2012, and, 2013, and the 2% increase for 2014. So that's where that number came from.
So when I'm looking at this, while you're up here, is the 7753, that's what we received last year. That's 13 year, right? So the new year will be 75 projected, is that correct?
New year will be 75,397, that's correct.
Okay, so this 70 is what he received? Last year.
Right.
So, again, I make the point that I think that you're deserving of more in that particular category than, and I think there should be more latitude with you as being the city solicitor than your first assistant. And I would make a recommendation that amount be increased, and I will make, when it's the appropriate time for making my recommendations, I'm going to do so.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. And that's something that we've talked about, and I think everybody on the council is in agreement that looking at the type of position, the importance of the position, and the skill that's needed to be a city solicitor deserves more than the salary that's put forward. So
I drive my question tonight, Mr. Chairman, based on the fact that both parties are here, and I also, and just God forbid I'm not here, I want it to be known that I think that this position should be increased a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And I think that in speaking with my colleagues, not getting a commitment from them and talking with them, I think there's a favor for that. So, and they feel it's justified.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That is noted by the chair.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilor Hess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly with my counsel to the right. Some of the city councils have discussed it at various meetings, whether it's been here in the city council chambers. We want to come up with a figure which we think would be fair to Paul and also to the residents of our community, because Paul is a full-time solicitor.
Correct. That's right.
And in the past, we've had solicitors who work part-time. It's known. We also have another issue in your department is your paralegal. I guess it is just past the bar.
Correct.
So I think we have to look at her salary, because she's not going to stay for $37,000 without question.
That's correct.
With a law degree.
That's
So
correct.
I think we have to look at that salary also and bring them up to date. I don't know how we're going to do that, whether we get compatible from other cities and towns surrounding us. Okay, but I think it has to be adjusted to be fair to our city employees, all of them.
Right. The other thing too is his paralegal is part of the Union B, and that has to be in fact bargained. So
even at that, would she go out of the
She's still
union?
hired as a paralegal.
Yeah, but if she were to resign Friday and come back Monday as management, as Paul is?
Well, she'd have to come back as a city solicitor, and she'd have to be appointed by the mayor as a city solicitor.
Right, okay.
But that's the way that'd have to work. And but she'd still stay, however, as this time stands, she's a paralegal in Unit B, and she'd have to be impact bargained
Yeah.
for that. Okay.
I mean, from what I understand, talking to people out there, she's very good. She just, I was up at City Hall today, she told me she just passed the bar, which is great. She likes working for the city of Revere, so I think we should consider her as somewhere along the line. I understand
Okay.
what George said, but we have to look at a mechanism where we could look at that.
Understood. Understood.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Councilor Hatch. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I agree with Councilor Hassie and Councilor Guanasso regarding the salary for our city solicitor. I'm still waiting for, a couple cities. I know you're busy doing those comparisons, but...
I actually have some that I've received. I'm just trying to put them in format. I probably won't get them to you till
That's not a
after the end of
problem.
June.
I agree. I think the numbers are there. I think we have a number in mind, and I think you'll be happy with it. But the other issue I want to bring up, Mr. Chairman, is, believe it or not, the first assistant city solicitor. Now, I know we're talking about taking care of our solicitor. And based on the spread between the number one guy in the office and the number two guy in the office, that's pretty drastic. And I think we ought to make some adjustment, come up with some, I don't know if he's in the union.
No,
he's
no.
not. Okay,
No, no.
so I think there should be some kind of adjustment for number two.
You're
and I
preaching
think
to
we
the
have-
choir.
I think we have to bring those salaries a little closer because we're taking care of the big guy, and I think we ought to take care of the number two guy to bring him up. Comparison. I'm not saying exactly the same, spread, but something within reason to show that we appreciate what he's doing and that in his position as an attorney.
Right.
Because this number at 71 is only less than $4,000 spread from the city solicitor. So I would think that we ought to think about coming up with some kind of number for the number two guy. Also, I have a question. I'm looking at the positions, and we have a paralegal, and we have a principal clerk, two principal clerks.
Right.
Okay.
Licensing
and
is the
looking at the list, I know Joan just retired. So we're going to be looking for someone there. And you have Cheryl as the principal clerk and paralegal, but now you're splitting it. I don't know, is she going to get both of those salaries
She
combined?
does get both of those
Is that-
salaries. I do not have a paralegal and a principal clerk/assistant. I just have one individual who happens to be a paralegal. She'd always received that stipend because she came to this job as a paralegal. Paralegal stipend was created before I think I even started this position to just give some incentive to an individual who might have some interest in the legal field to come work in our office.
Okay, no, I was just questioning because I only saw it's 4 people and 5 positions on the
Yeah, that's really not
in
a
the
separate
book, so I was
position.
just kind of a little confused there, but I just wanted a clarification on it.
Yeah.
Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think we do have that in committee, and hopefully we can come out with some kind of solution for the solicitor's office to make some comparable increases.
Is there
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
any timeline on when you want some information, when you'd like to reach that conclusion? I'm happy to talk or meet with or...
Yeah, I think the sooner the better.
Okay, okay.
As far as information. I know I got some information from you.
Yeah, I had asked for some additional information.
Yep.
And I've been trying to quantify it. This is part of the delay. If you look at an individual salary in any city and town, to me, the only best way to gauge it is to see what's the range within that city or town. So if
Yep.
a solicitor in Medford is making 50 grand, but the highest paid person in that city is making 75, he's paid pretty high. If he's making 50 and the highest paid person is 200, he's not paid high at all. So we're looking at, per Ira's suggestion, of towns that have relative similar populations.
Yep.
But they're not all identical, is my point.
Thank
No,
you, Mr.
thanks, Paul. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul,
John.
I think I've said to my colleagues, indicated that and I've spoken to one of the previous city solicitors, your predecessor, who indicated to me that he felt that the job was a full-time job, okay, and deserved full-time compensation for that position. I think if you go back to Bob Lombard or any Bob Maher, any of the other city solicitors, Richard Vigliotti, somewhere there, they had other practices outside, and I know you don't.
Right, that's correct.
And I don't have any qualms about working to some salary solution that would be agreeable to what the council and yourself feels would be just compensation for that position. Now, when I get down to the paralegal part of it, does that person's salary increase because they now have a law degree?
Well, only under the educational incentive portion.
So it does increase under the educational
Yeah,
incentive?
that position of principal clerk, because the law degree is now there, this ordinance requires, I think, 3.5% for associates, 7.5% for bachelor's, and 10% for an advanced degree. So anyone in City Hall has an advanced degree would get a 10%
So she would get the additional 10% in additional to the paralegal?
Well, she's 7.5, so she gets an additional 2.5.
So she's getting what, 37 plus 8, she's up to 45, and then another 4,500, so she's up close to $50,000 for paralegal. Yeah. Is that correct? I just think we should be treading a little easy here as to where we're going with salary increases and salary adjustments. Yourself, I have no problem whatsoever.
I think the job has changed since I started here. We have 2 full-time attorneys. The assistant solicitor actually had a lot more experience as a litigation attorney when we brought him in. If you look at salaries of attorneys in the private sector, this is not even close. I'm not even earning what a public defender would earn. So I think there is some adjustment to be made.
I'm not quarreling with
No,
yourself.
I know, but it's part of in this, I don't want to bring back up what you said earlier about the outside legal, is resources. When you have 2 people, a litigation, a particular case can take over your life, your day exclusively, and we don't have a lot of resources. So I do value the support that I have, because not only do they act as a paralegal in some capacity, they're also dealing as an office manager with everything else that goes on in the office as well. So
I'm looking through this budget, and not just your department,
Sure.
but other departments. I see increases which are substantial, over and above the two for up to last year, the 2 for this year that starts in July, and also the picking up that extra Friday. And I think some of those, I looked at one, and I think it's like, you're talking about $15,000, okay, for that. And I'm not going to get into names of departments right now, but I think it would behoove all of us to take, a serious look at this budget with respect to that. My feeling is that unless it can be justified, there should be nothing over and above the 222 for any city employee. There are people down there that are making $30,000 a year, $35,000 a year, and so they're going to get $600 or $750 raise. And then we're looking at the other side of it. We're talking about $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 increases. And I don't think that's good for the morale of the city employees. And unless, again, as in your case, we can justify that. I think it sends a bad message. And I don't think it's good for this particular economy. We're coming out of a struggling economy now, as is every other city and town across the nation. So I think we have to tread very carefully with regard to salary increases. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. And on that note, I want to say that we have talked about salary increases and new positions. Maybe what we could start to think about is having a comprehensive salary or wage study done for the entire city, and looking at those who are non-union, those who may probably should be non-union, and what they're making and what people are making and what people are making in other cities, and kind of give us a good comparison. I know actually the Collins Center at UMass has done this for a couple of communities, and maybe that's something that we could start to think about, is having a comprehensive conversation about wages, and because obviously I think everyone is in agreement on your issue particularly, but it's an issue across the whole city. So if we can kind of make smart decisions with information and data that backs up those decisions, I think we'd be much better off for it. But I thank you for spending your night with us, and appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Sorry, Councilor Correggio.
Thank you very much. I believe definitely a salary adjustment. You've gone above and beyond what the job calls for, especially that savings, I shouldn't say savings, but negotiations with a lawsuit we could have faced almost $10 million and be able to negotiate that down to $1.7 million or around that area, working with outside legal people to be able to try to protect the city. And you've been really overburdened with a lot of litigation. There's been a lot of litigation, especially this year and most years. So credit goes out to you. I mean, the city, you put the city in a protective position and be able to protect the taxpayers and the residents. And whatever is reasonable, I'll be in full support for you. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. Thank you, Paul. Next up, we have the MIS Director, page 39.
Good evening.
Thanks for your patience. I know it's been a long night, I'm sure.
No problem.
I have a couple questions. First are the two new positions. I know the mayor had spoken about both of them, actually. And I know one of them is supposed to be working with police and fire specifically, and then you'll have one kind of as an assistant in your office. That's accurate?
That's what yes.
Okay. And the
Mr. Chairman, the reason we put the employees for the police and fire department under the MIS department is because we want to centralize the MIS department and the employees of it, and at the same time, when the one that's working for the police and fire, we didn't want to put in either one of those budgets, because then that department head would feel that they work specifically for them.
Yeah.
So it's a shared thing between the police and fire, and not that the department heads are unreasonable, but we didn't want to get into that contention.
Yeah.
So that's why we put it here, and it was actually at the suggestion of the Collins Center that we do it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's in his budget.
No, that makes sense. The placement of it makes sense. The education incentive looks like it's new this year. Is that for those positions, or did you obtain a?
That's for those positions. It's
Okay.
potential.
Okay. Yeah. And then the computer operations looks like it got a little bit of a bump over last year. Is there anything in particular that you'll be purchasing?
Well, primarily the systems that are in place now are reaching their 6-7 years of life. So there's going to be some swap out, some new hardware that we need to purchase. Expectancy of a server is usually about 6 years. So we start to experience problems, degrading of performance, and eventually it'll die. So we want to be proactive and try to replace the equipment before it crashes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know as far as computer equipment can go, and after a year it's out of date pretty much. And
pretty much. Yeah. So we built 7-8 years out of them and see how far we can go, but we don't want to push it.
Yeah. Okay. Any counselors have any questions? Counselor has.
It's a basic question. George, if you're looking at the final budget, fiscal 13, that's current year,
Yes,
all right, that's only up to April, correct?
right.
There's still 2 more months we would have to add on to that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. No further question.
There's 2 more months added on.
I'll tell you, I know what I'm talking about. Mitchell doesn't. I do.
Any other counselors? No. No. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Last but not least, we will have the purchasing department, page 41. Page 41. I think. Oh, I get the wrong one.
Thank you. Easy. You're welcome. Anything?
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
The license commission is not there, Mr. Chairman. They don't even have the fiscal clerk position.
No.
Why is that?
That's in the solicitor's office, Council.
That's in the solicitor?
Yeah, we have the principal clerk for the license commission in the solicitor's office. Okay, and he addressed that issue when he was here.
And with that, we will close our first marathon session of fiscal year 14 budget. We will be back here tomorrow.